Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Caitlin Elliott, and today we are going to be talking about the Babes in the Woods murders. So, oh, Riley wants to say hi. Hi Riley, little weird ass dog. So, I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard of this case, so this case is actually recommended to me by one of you guys. And I was actually in like a lot of shock when I found out about it, because it's like, Babes in the Woods, what the hell is this, right? So, I researched it, and oh my god, I was like digging and digging and digging and digging, trying to like figure out what the hell this was all about. And so I was just like overwhelmed and torn up, like, oh my god, like this involves children, you know? Like most of my cases I try to cover involve children though, but this one actually like really set me off, because I was like, oh my god, you know, it's a wild, wild story. So, Babes in the Woods murders. Have you ever heard of it? If not, well, you're gonna learn about today. So, this case is actually a really old case, and it takes place back in the 1930s. So this was during the Great Depression. If you don't know what the Great Depression was, it was the biggest stock market crash that the United States and the whole world has ever seen. So that happened back, I believe it was October 29th of 1929, and there was a huge stock market crash. Like, people were lost, like, all this money, banks were closed, houses were foreclosed, you know, it was just a very difficult time for a lot of people, because a lot of people ended up losing their jobs because they couldn't afford to pay for them, like, pay the employees. So, yeah, it was rough back then, it really was. So, how does that have to do with this story today? Because like I said, the story takes place in 1934. So, the Babes in the Woods murders. It was a child murder case that involved the murders of 3 young girls that were found in the woods of Pennsylvania. The fuck was that? All I heard was, dude! I don't know. Probably my husband. So, on November 24th of 1924, there was these 2 men. Their names were John Clark and Clark Jardine. I know Clark. And they were in the woods, and they were going hunting, and they were, you know, just looking for deer or whatever you could shoot back in those days, because, you know, back in the 30s, you actually had to shoot your food in order to provide for your family, because it was just very difficult to be able to afford meat and food and everything, you know? So, they were searching for food and everything, going hunting, and they ended up stumbling upon a scene that nobody deserves to see. And what they saw ended up actually haunting them for the rest of their lives. So they found the bodies of 3 children. Norma Sedgwick, who was 12, Dewilla Nooks, who was 10, and her sister Cordelia Nooks, who was 8. And their bodies were under a blanket in the woods along the Pennsylvania Route 233 on Centerville Road. So obviously, you know, they were freaking the fuck out. They were like, oh my god, like, there's these children's bodies there, they're dead, like, what? You know, like, they're probably, like, freaking out. So, it is said that the children, they were actually suffocated to death, and this suffocation was assumed to be done by the father, Elmo Nooks. Yeah, Elmo, that's a name you don't hear anymore, except for on Sesame Street. And he was actually the biological father of Dewilla and Cordelia. Remember the 2 youngest ones? So, the following day, on November 25th of 1934, it is said that Elmo actually shot and killed his 18-year-old niece named Winifred Pierce, and then he shot and killed himself. So, it's like, everyone was like, well, what the fuck is going on? First we found the bodies of these kids, you know, that belonged to Elmo. Then Elmo commits suicide and kills his niece. Like, what is going on? Like, everyone was in the area was just baffled. Everyone in the whole state of Pennsylvania was just baffled, you know? And this was one of the biggest stories in the time since Charlie Ross and The Boy in the Box. You know what I mean? This was like big news, y'all. So, we're going to be talking about the events leading up towards the murders. So, in 1934, Elmo had a reputation of being a good father. So, it said that he loved his kids, he loved his family, and he was just a good man all around. He always was helping other people out. He never gave any thoughts about himself. And he had what was said to be a nice job at the time, because remember, this was a Great Depression. It's very hard to find jobs, but it said he had a very nice job, so good for him. And he had a nice home at the time, and he had his niece there living with him, and his niece would help him take care of the kids, because back then, you know, it was frowned upon to be a single father and take care of these kids. We're going to talk about that more later. But in September of 1934, Elmo ended up receiving life insurance policies for his kids. And then he ended up changing the his beneficiary from being his kids to his sister. Which, I mean, I would have raised some red flags, like, what the fuck, what's going on, you know? So, it's unclear, like, why Elmo felt the need to do this. This is the song, la 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 la. Elmo's World, do do do. This is the song, la 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 la. Elmo's World, do do do. Sorry, that every time I hear, like, I was researching this case and I saw the name Elmo, I was like, this is the song, la 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 la. Elmo's World, do do do. You know, it's just, Elmo is just a funny name. You know, it just kind of is. But anyways, off topic. But so he, like I said, he had received the life insurance policies for his kids. Then on Halloween of 1934, Elmo, he apparently had bought a brand new blue sedan. Like, he just went out and, like, spent money on this sedan. And, you know, I personally, like, because it's the Great Depression and everything, I would have been like, where'd you get this money from, sir? Especially because he paid for it in cash. In cash. Like, with bills that some people have never even seen in their lives, you know, I'm talking about like the $100 bills. Like, other people were like, hey, where did this man get this cash from? Because it's said that, you know, they weren't the wealthiest of families, but it's just bizarre that, you know, to them and to myself personally, that he would pay in cash for this brand new spanking car. You know what I mean? So, the same vehicle that he had spent all that money on in cash was actually found where he had committed suicide and killed himself. Piece of shit. So, and I'm saying piece of shit because anyone who harms children or, like, any other family members, just harms people in general, is a piece of shit. Just saying. So, on November 11th and November 12th, Elmo had left his home with his niece and his 3 girls, and he had just been paid from his job $50. So he, like, you would think that if they were traveling somewhere, they'd take the $50, because $50 back then was, like, a lot of money. It was, like, $500. And he just left it at the house, which kind of startled a lot of people, because they're just like, if you're gonna go someplace, wouldn't you, you know, take your money with you, pay for gas or something? But apparently not. Apparently not. So, on November of 1934, a lot of this happens in November, sorry everybody. The family had stopped in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they had ate dinner. Remember, Philadelphia is where they had Charlie Ross and The Boy in the Box. Hey, coincidence? Coincidence? I think not. I think not. I'm always finding these Philadelphia places. So, and then it's saying the girls' bodies ended up being placed in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which, if you don't know where Carlisle is, I've been to Carlisle a couple times. It's up by, like, Hershey Park, Hershey, Pennsylvania, and all that. So, it's about, like, I'd like to say, like, a 40-minute drive from where I grew up from, like 40, 45 minutes, something like that. But they were killed and they were placed in the woods in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So it's just like, what? So Elmo and his niece, they had abandoned their sedan in McVeigh Town, Pennsylvania, and they ended up hitchhiking to Blair County, Pennsylvania, which you don't know where Blair County, Pennsylvania is. It's, if you ever heard of Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, that's where Blair County is. There's not a lot in Blair County, if I'm gonna be honest with you. There's not a lot there. So, you know, they're hitchhiking all through Pennsylvania, blah, blah, blah. Then it hits November 23rd of that same year. So, they were trying to sell the niece's spectacles, her glasses, to get some extra money. And they were unable to do that, so... Oh, not the niece. This is the Elmo dude. Sorry. I confused myself. Elmo's spectacles, they're trying to sell his glasses to get some extra money, but they were unable to do so. So, Winifred Pierce, she's got on like this nice, fancy, nice coat, and she sells that to get some extra money, which is a little fishy in itself. So that's when he traveled to nearby Altoona, Pennsylvania, which you don't know where Altoona is. It's kind of like where the Del Grosso amusement park is and the Del Grosso spaghetti sauce company is. And so it's not too far away from Blair County. So they ended up going to Altoona. And while they were in Altoona, he bought a .22 caliber rifle, and he ended up paying $2.25 with it, and that's the money that he ended up receiving from selling Winifred's, oh, I think it was, well, one of them, well, someone's coat. They stole someone's coat. It was hard to get control of, like, which one belonged to who, and because they only used the last names, and it was kind of confusing. I'm sorry. So, on November 24th of 1934, Norma, Dewilla, and Cordelia, their bodies were found under a blanket in Pine Grove Furnace Park. I'm not 100% sure where that was, but hang on, let me check. I think they said it was, yeah, it was Centerville. It was by Centerville, remember? And just fart. Ew. We're not farting. Sorry, I think my dog's farting. And so, the bodies were placed, like, they were found, like, underneath this blanket there. And it said, the bodies were found, they were, obviously, they called the police. They got hold of the police somehow. They didn't have cell phones, but they got hold of the police. And, the police came down and brought a medical examiner. And the medical examiner ended up finding the cause of death, and they said the cause of death was suffocation by external means. Basically, someone suffocated them from the outside, like covered their mouth and their nose with like some type of item, could be like a bag or something, I don't know. So, that's so unfortunate. Like, they found like the two bodies of the two girls, or the three girls, sorry. And on November 24th of 1934, the same day, same year, Elmo Nooks and his sister, Winifred Pierce, were found dead. And the sister had a gunshot wound to the heart and to her head. While Elmo, the dad, he was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. So basically they committed suicide. So, a lot of people were like, yeah, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand, like, what exactly happened. Like, I personally believe, like, maybe they had, like, a mental breakdown and they went completely bonkers and killed their family and themselves. Like, I don't know. That's just a theory. So, we're going to talk about the identification of the bodies. So, at first, the media, they had gone, like, ballistic as soon as they found out, like, about the case, and it ended up going just everywhere. Like, everyone was finding out about this. Like, not even just in the state of Pennsylvania, but I'm talking about Ohio, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, like, all the surrounding states, New York, I said Pennsylvania, of course, it happened in Pennsylvania, duh. So, like, all the surrounding areas, like, found out about the case, and they're like, yo, what the fuck? So, there was, many false leads about, like, what exactly happened, and they ended up taking the photographs of the girls' bodies, and they ended up getting posted, like, all over the country to see if anybody could recognize these girls, or, hey, I'm right here, recognize the girls, or say, like, just who saw them last, like, what happened. They basically didn't know what happened. So, well, at the time, they didn't know who the girls were, the little girls. So, at the time, they were just like, could someone come forward with information about these kids? We don't know what's going on. So, hundreds of thousands of people came to view the bodies of the children. And, I wouldn't want to be one of those people. Just saying. So, a search for they went to go into the woods, and they were searching to see if there was anything that could bring up the identities of the children, like, you know, where they were found. Riley, get back. Get back here. No, stop it. So, they ended up finding clothing, towels, children's books, but, like, the names were ripped out. Like, they didn't want them to be known. And there was only one name that was ever found in the books, and the name was Norma. So it's possible, like, that Elmo, he killed them and then wanted to keep their identities hidden so no one will know who they were, which is just awful, because it ended up being like a Jane Doe case for years. So, like I said, the only name was Norma, and it was in one of the books. So, we're going to be talking about some theories right now about what could have happened. But I know what happened. And what happened was a bunch of shit must have gone down in the wackadoodles. So the earliest theories include a cult. Like, they must have thought like a cult had killed them because there was a symbol that was found on Norma Sedgwick's head. They just found like a symbol on her head. And they believe it was actually a head wound, but people are like, oh my gosh, it looks like something out of a cult, you know? Which, I don't know. You're part of a cult or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to throw shade to you. But that's just what they were saying, though. But I don't know where they could have gotten that from. So, others believe that it was actually just like a head wound, like she had been hit in the head, or had like a scratch on her head or something. But a lot of people claim that it was from a satanic type of cult, and it's just they just went with it. You were like, okay, it's satanic. All right, cool. So the police of Roseville, California, they actually found out about this whole thing. So they actually stated, like, the police of Roseville, California, all the way in California, not in Pennsylvania, all the way in freaking California, stated that Elmo, he wouldn't have killed them because he loved children. Don't even ask me how the Roseville police got involved. Roseville, whatever. But I just sat there, I was just like, And so the police, he actually believed that they were accidentally killed by carbon monoxide poisoning, which was caused by exhaust fumes. And like, that has to be it. It has to be it. They said it was suffocation. I don't believe it. It was exhaust fumes. So, and then they basically said that both Elmo and Winifred were so scared about being caught they could have been figured out and everything, it would have just ruined their lives, so they just decided to commit suicide. And the first thing I thought of when I read this was like, that's just a big bunch of horse shit. Like, come on, Mr. Police Officer. You're supposed to be the head of the police chief in California or whatever, and you're sitting there going, you know, I think this is really what happened, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't show that they died of carbon monoxide poisoning. It doesn't show anything. They said they died from a freaking headshot wound, and you're saying carbon monoxide poisoning? Like, what the hell? So another theory was that Elmo and Winifred fled so that they could be together. You know, incest, if you will, because that was his niece. Incest. And the girls ended up being suffocated because they didn't want them to suffer anymore, because they were already poor as it was, and it was the Great Depression, and they didn't want them to live this type of way, so they just suffocated them. Boo-hoo. Again, I think that's horseshit too. And then there was another thing that said that Elmo Nooks was mentally ill and had killed the kids to protect them from an evil that only he could see, because he was possessed by the devil and he had mental issues. Which I don't know. Hey, ooh, Oh, you chewed on Dad. Oh. Riley. He was chewing on his dad's uniform jacket. He's gonna get in trouble. So, another thing said that was that she was that Elmo was mentally ill and killed the kids to protect from evil that only he could see, blah, 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 horse shit. So, and then there was another thing that it kind of makes sense, but, like, at the same, I mean, this is probably the most, like, plausible thing, was that there's a murder-suicide pact made by Elmo and Winifred because they were incestuous lovers, which if you don't know what incest means, it means basically you're family in love with family. Like, you love your cousin or your niece or your nephew or your brother or your sister, like, in a sexual kind of way, which is really disgusting. So, that's one of the other theories, which that one kind of makes sense, if you understand. Like, it kind of does. So, we're going to be talking about the family strife. Okay, Riley, you're going to have to find something to do, please. You was in my way. You was in my way, boy. Hey, 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 Riley. So, okay, you're gonna have to leave. Sorry. So, two of Elmo's sisters, they actually, like, whenever the whole court thing was going on, they were actually arrested after the identification of the bodies for disturbing the peace. And it said that they were actually harassing the third sister, who was Winifred's mother. Now, ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? They were harassing her probably because of the incestuous rumors. Riley, find something to do, please. So, it said that, sorry, my nose itches, that Mrs. Gibbs, one of the sisters, told the mother that, and like the mother of the kids and all, said, and I quoted, that if it hadn't been for your family, he would still be alive, end quote. Like, what the fuck? Riley, get off! Always chewing on me. So, both sisters said the charges were actually unnecessary about the charges for disturbing the peace, because they said that they just wanted to console their sister and ask about the foot deformity of Winifred's, because apparently Winifred had a foot deformity, so they were just asking about, like, what the hell. So, after the sentencing, it said that the sisters had just screeched as loud as they could on the top of their lungs, and they disrupted the court, and that's why they ended up being charged with that. So, now we're going to be talking about Robert Nooks, and if you don't stop biting me, Riley, you're going to be going out. Yes, don't bite me. So, stop it. He told the media that the family had multiple troubles. You know, multiple forms of trouble. So that Mrs. Pierce and her husband had marital issues. Like, oh shit, because, you know, back then it was frowned upon. Like, incest was bad enough. But, we're talking about, like, marital issues. You don't get divorced back then. It was very frowned upon to get divorced. So, they're having, like, marital issues. Like, oh shit. Oh shit. So, after all that, Elmo had allowed his sister to move into the home. Interesting. Now, we're going to be talking about the aftermath. So, in March of 1935, the Pennsylvania General Assembly discussed fingerprinting all school children in case, like, in the state, in case this ever happened again, they'd be able to be identified. And the year of 1968, Riley, the year of 1968, highway workers eventually installed a sign where the children's bodies had been found, and on it that reads, "In this spot were found 3 babes in the wood, November 24th of 1934. It lists the date and everything, end quote. So, then the Cumberland County of Pennsylvania had, stop biting me! Bit my arm so freaking hard. Cumberland County had paid $997.75 to all of the doctors, the coroners, the photographers, which you don't know what coroner is. It's basically someone who identifies, like, how someone died. and the photographers who investigated the deaths of the children and the family. So, the Nooks family, they actually, well, history stated that Winifred Pierce had died at the age of 18 due to unusual circumstances. And that, okay, this is like, it like made up a lie saying that, you know, Winifred died under unusual circumstances. Not like she killed herself. And then saying that Elmo and his children died in an automobile accident. So basically they're saying, like, they didn't commit suicide. They're trying to basically cover up for what had happened and make it seem like Elmo was a victim and that everyone in the thing was a victim. You know, everyone's a victim. You know, victim blaming and shaming or whatever it was. And I just sat there listening to that and I was just like, how does that make any sense? Like, yeah, people in the 30s are messed up for something. I don't know what the hell, you know? So, there are numerous websites that include very graphic photos of the children's bodies. And I'm not going to show it to you because it's just disturbing. And in my opinion, I have to include this because in my opinion, I don't think it's right for those children's bodies to be, like, broadcasted like that. Because it's unnecessary and it's wrong and it's mean. And when I saw that, I was just like, what kind of a sick motherfucker does some stupid shit like that? Like, why in the fuck would you do that? Why? So there's even like photographs and newspaper articles and there's even artifacts about the case at the Pennsylvania State Police Museum. I'm not sure where that is though, but there is a lot of information about this case that was put in there, like a lot of artifacts they called it. And I sat there reading that like, oh my gosh, you're gonna put these, like what happened to these kids like on display for everybody to see? Like you want to respect what happened, you don't want to disrespect it, you know? And I just sat there like listening to it like, oh my god, like, what is wrong with you people? Why would you get entertainment about like knowing what happened to these poor kids? Like, let's just put everyone's bodies on display or let the pictures and whatnot on display. I was like, yeah, what the fuck is wrong with people? So, we're going to talk about the funeral now. So, thousands and thousands of people actually ended up attending the funeral services of the 3 girls. And it said that there was the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts were there. This was like back in the 30s, which I was kind of just like, they had Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts back then? I did not know that. So, they had them there as pallbearers, which if you don't know what pallbearers are, they're basically people that, I think they carry, like, flowers or something, or some type of memoriam during a funeral, and they would place it on the graves. I'm not 100% sure, because I've only been to one funeral in my life, and I don't even think they had pallbearers, though, but bear with me. And so, they called upon these local religious preachers and just religious leaders to recite prayers at the funeral, which they did. And it said that, now this just like pissed me off, but it said that Elmo and Mrs. Pierce, Mrs. Winifred Pierce, the niece that apparently, you know, might have been in a relationship with Elmo, the incestuous lover, it said that they were even buried in the same area as the girls, at the cemetery, buried in the same area as his daughters. And not only that, but because Elmo was in the I believe he was in the army like back then, but I think he fought in World War I. They said that the American Legion had shown up and they had done a funeral progression or procession, you know, that marching, you know, and they did a whole, like, military honors for him, and they buried him with full, honorable military honors, and I just sat there going, like, he was honored by the American Legion, and I sat there like, are you shitting me right now? Like, this guy killed his daughters, and committed suicide with his niece in an incestuous love affair thing, and you guys honor him in full military honors. Like, does that shit make any sense to you? Because it certainly doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, I sat there reading that, and I was just like, yo, what the fuck? Like, what in the world? So now we're going to be talking about Elmo and Robert Knox. Those are the two brothers. Elmo's the dad, you know, Robert's the uncle. So Elmo James Knox, he was born on January 8th of 1903, and he was born in Springville, Utah. And at the time that he was born, Springville, Utah only had about like 4,300 people living there, so it was a very small town. And he was the youngest son of John Thomas Knox and Amila, correct me if I'm wrong, Amila and Guyman. And both Elmo and his brother Robert, get off of my shoes, ended up serving in the Marine Corps back in, from 1920 to 1922. So they were both in for about 2 years, which I'm kind of confused about because most things have about, you know, a couple years, but I don't know. I was just a little confused there. Something didn't add up there for me, but I don't know. Maybe they were dishonorably discharged or honorably discharged. I don't know. So now we're going to talk about Elmo's love life. So on July 28th of 1923, Elmo had married a woman named Mary Isabel Hayford, and she had another daughter from the previous marriage named Nora Sedgwick. Hence, that's why Nora Sedgwick existed. And she had him with her ex-husband named Roland Birmingham Sedgwick. That's a name. Birmingham Sedgwick. That's an interesting name. And they ended up having 2 children together. Dewilla, she was born on May 2nd of 1924. And Cordelia, and she was born on June 2nd of 1926. So like their birthdays are like a month apart, but 2 years apart, you know what I mean? So it's said that his wife, Mary, remember that I told you like they got married to Mary Isabel Hayford? Well, his wife, Mary, turns out that she actually ended up dying from a self-induced abortion that went horribly wrong. Hey, stop it! Get off of that. From a self-induced abortion. And she ended up dying in Salt Lake City, Utah. And after this, Elmo ended up taking his daughters over to his sisters to help raise them, because at this time, it was actually frowned upon to be a single father. Like, a lot of people made up lies, like, oh yeah, my wife, she didn't do this, or she just died, you know, in childbirth, or whatever. And, you know, it's sad, you know, it said that, like, a guy couldn't take care of a house because he had to have a woman do it, or whatever. So it was a woman's job. So, yeah. That is the end of the story for you guys today. I hope you all enjoyed it, because right now I'm going to be turning on to my thoughts. And let me just tell you about my thoughts, okay? Because I always tend to tell about my... Riley! Talk about my thoughts after, like, I'm finished, like, done my episodes or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm going to talk to you about my thoughts today. So, my thoughts is that Elmo is a piece of shit for killing his children. And that it does make sense that him and his niece had an incestuous relationship, because they ended up killing the kids and then they killed each other. Like, why would you feel the need to do that? Like, what's going on here? Like, maybe they got caught, you know, maybe someone started thinking about it. I don't know. Maybe the kids were actually like incestuous kids. Like, I don't fucking know. So, Riley! And it's like, why did he have Mary have an abortion? Like, there's so many questions that I have to ask, but, like, there's not enough answers for any of them. And if you don't get off of me, you're going in timeout. Riley, you want to go for a walk? You want to go bye-byes? Leave me alone. So, not enough information out there to explain exactly what they were thinking, because, like I said, I can't tell you what they were thinking, because this happened back in the 30s, though, but that was my thoughts on it, that they're pieces of shit, and that it does make sense that he killed them, because they were, like, children of incestuous lovers. But that's all I have for you guys today, so tune in with me next time, and yeah, hope you all enjoyed. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below what you think, and yeah. See you all in my next video. Bye, guys. Mwah. Riley, say bye. Alright, fine. Be a bitch.